Now, the federal government subsidizes corporations working in the North with a program called Nutrition North. The Nutrition North gives millions of dollars of subsidies to these companies. These companies take a third of it and don't pass it on to consumers. So will the Liberal government reform Nutrition North so the benefit goes to the people, not to the CEOs of corporations working in the North?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister for Northern Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for that very important question. Our government is absolutely committed to ensuring that 100% of the subsidy, the retail subsidy, is passed directly to Northerners. We know that prices are too high in the North, and we have worked, we'll continue to work with territorial governments, with Indigenous partners, and more importantly, people who live in the North and the Arctic to make progress. Progress has been made, but there's a lot of work to do.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Program is an abject failure. C'est clair que les entreprises.
Clearly, big grocery in the North are ripping people off, and the government, through its subsidies, is giving money to these companies. And these companies, instead of helping people, are giving big gifts to CEOs and big grocery chains. So my question is simple. When will the Liberal government solve this program, fix it, so it's helpful for people and not CEOs? The Honourable Minister. Thank you. I'd like to thank the member for his question. Our government is committed to make sure that 100% of subsidies will go directly to citizens of the North. We know that prices are too high in the North, and we're working with the territorial government and with our Indigenous partners and people who live in the North and the Arctic to make progress on this file. And it's such an important subject, and there's so much work to be done, and we're going to do it. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
After 8 years, this Liberal NDP Prime Minister is not worth the crime, the corruption, or the cost. Common sense Conservatives will axe the tax because the NDP Liberal Carbon Tax Coalition has failed. They have not hit a single emissions target. But do you know who has succeeded? Farmers. According to the Global Institute for Food Security, the carbon footprint for wheat grown in Saskatchewan is 67% lower than the rest of the world. So why is the Prime Minister punishing Canadian farmers for this incredible accomplishment? Instead of blaming farmers for his carbon tax failures, will he not axe his plan to increase the tax on April 1st?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And being a farmer, I fully understand the importance and the effect of climate change, Mr. Speaker. And we understand how important it is to take care of the land. That is why we as a government have invested $1.5 million to help farmers and processors reduce their environmental footprint and stay on the cutting edge. We will continue to fight climate change and work with farmers and ranchers right across this country, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
The fact is, farmers are succeeding where the Liberal NDP Carbon Tax Coalition is failing. And what is farmers' reward for this? A 23% increase in the carbon tax on April 1st. Common sense Conservatives will axe the tax and reward farmers for those accomplishments. Did you know that wheat grown in Canada can travel around the world 3.5 times before it has the same carbon footprint as wheat grown in Europe? Canadian farmers have accomplished this through innovation, not carbon taxes. Will the Liberals finally admit they were wrong, pass 234 unamended, and axe their plan to increase the carbon tax on April 1st?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just last week, in fact, I was visiting a farmer in Peterborough who is working on regenerative agriculture, but I find it...
Colleagues, order. The chair is having great difficulty hearing the response from the minister due to other folks taking the floor. I'm also hearing the member who'd asked a question having difficulty even hearing in his earpiece. So I'm going to ask all members, please, to keep it down. The Honourable Minister from the top.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do find it quite ironic to be lectured by the Conservative Party on support to farmers when at the end of last year, they voted against On-Farm Climate Action Fund to support sustainable agriculture. They voted against Dairy Innovation and Investment Fund for farmers, Mr. Speaker. They voted against funding in support of dairy, poultry, and egg supply management producers. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we believe in our farmers, we support our farmers, and we help them to fight climate change.
Doesn't make sense.
The Honourable Member from Lethbridge.
Common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, stop the crime, and fix the budget. That's what our commitment to Canadians is. Meanwhile, the NDP Liberal Prime Minister can't help himself but skyrocket the crime, increase the corruption, and of course he's just not worth the cost because he's causing it to go through the roof. But he's incredibly hypocritical because for him pollution is free. He can just jet set around the world while Canadians continue to pay. On April 1st, they'll see an increase of 23% on the carbon tax. My question is simple. Will the Liberals finally side with Conservatives and scrap the tax?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the most appropriate question is, will the Conservatives actually look at the data? The data will tell you that 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more money back and that it is actually an affordability measure. If the Honourable Member would actually look at the research done by the University of Calgary, she would know that. But, Mr. Speaker, I think Canadians really need to understand that the Conservative approach to climate change is to let the planet burn. It is to leave an impoverished environment and an impoverished economy for the future of our children. Shame, shame, shame.
The Honourable Member from Lethbridge.
The contrast could not be more stark when it comes to the Liberals versus the Conservatives and their opposition to the Canadian people.
Once again, colleagues, the chair could not hear the question being asked by the Honourable Member, and that Honourable Member is actually close to the chair. The Honourable Member from Lethbridge, from the top.
It's shameful that my colleagues across the way would clap for a 23% increase in the carbon tax when Canadians are lining up at the open in insurmountable numbers. Millions of Canadians cannot afford to put food on their tables, and these folks over here stand and clap. That is shameful. When will they grow?
Go on.
You can call them to account.
Mr. Speaker.
You can call them to account. You can call them to account.
So time has come awfully close to the end of the Honourable Member's question. I'd like to reassure the Honourable Member the chair nor the table had heard a comment that was unparliamentary. So this is why it is very important to all colleagues, it is very important for members to not comment while a member has the floor. The recognized member has the floor. I'm going to ask the Honourable Member, please, to restrain himself while I try to give an explanation to all members. As I was saying to colleagues, is that it's so important for us to keep our voices down and to restrain ourselves while... I'm going to ask the Honourable Member once again to please, and ask him, please follow the good example of his whip and restrain himself while this chair is talking. It is so important for colleagues to be quiet so that the chair can hear the question, and if on occasion that members say something that is untoward or unparliamentary, that the chair or the table can hear that comment to making sure that things happen within an appropriate parliamentary tone. The Honourable Member from New Brunswick Southwest.
You didn't get an answer.
I'm terribly sorry. I'm terribly sorry. The honourable member, the honourable minister, to resign. So, again, I'm going to ask all members please restrain. So I'm going to give the honourable member from Lethbridge 10 seconds to put her question left, if she chooses to exercise that, to allow 10 seconds left to ask her question. Would the honourable member from Lethbridge like to have those 10 seconds?
Really? Mr. Speaker, the minister across the way had something to say to me before. Perhaps they'd say it on the record. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we agree that the contrast could not be more stark.
Yes.
Could not be more stark, Mr. Speaker, because of the Canada carbon rebate. We are putting money back in the pockets of Canadian, in the honourable member's own province, Mr. Speaker. $1,800 will go back to Canadian and Albertan families because of the Canada carbon rebate, Mr. Speaker. $1,200 for Manitoba.
Just I want to remind members to be very judicious. If they're going to quote from something, but otherwise it could be perceived as a prop. So I'll ask the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to continue. She has 6 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, I'll close by saying that the leader of the opposition's climate denial would axe all of the rebates that we are giving.
The honourable member from New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, while common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crimes, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption after 8 years. Canadians are paying higher prices because of sky-high taxes. Today in New Brunswick, we pay over almost 60 cents more for gasoline per litre than they do in neighbouring Maine. On April the 1st, the carbon tax is going to go up again, 23%. Will the Liberals axe the carbon tax and give Canadians a break? Yeah. Great job.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, what do you call someone who says one thing and does the other? You say they are acting hypocritically. Mr. Speaker,
the Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, you would say that they are acting hypocritically. The Conservative Party says they have principles. If you don't like, they have other principles. In their 2021 platform, on which every one of those members of Parliament was elected, the platform said, quote, "We recognize that the most efficient way to reduce our emissions is to use pricing mechanisms." The Conservative position is not only devoid of facts, Mr. Speaker, but their position is the height of hypocrisy. How can Canadians believe anything